Hi.
Hi, welcome to the channel. I'm so excited to have you, Rachel.
I'm so excited to be here, Dakota. This is amazing.
Yeah, you are like seriously one of my favorite people in the whole world to talk to. Me and
Mm.
Rachel have talked a lot in the past as we've gone through the breathwork training. And when we get on a call, it's just like I plan for it to run long.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
I
just
always
talk.
have buffer time in between our calls. I'm like, okay, Dakota is scheduled for about 45 minutes, so I should just carve out an hour and a half because we're just like keep going.
Yeah, it's so fun. I feel like our energies just really match each other's
Mm.
and we get each other and it's great.
I know. We need to hang out in person.
I know. I know. We'll make it happen.
Then we'll just talk forever and ever.
Yeah. It will totally happen. Yeah, and I'm so excited because today, Rachel, we are talking about parts, which I think
Mm.
is like a weird word that I think if somebody heard that, they'd be like,
Like body parts. What
yeah,
kind of
like, what do you mean? What do you mean there?
what
Yeah,
do
so,
you mean?
right? What,
Yeah.
Rachel, what are parts?
Parts. I feel like people can interpret what parts are very differently. I interpret them as kind of segmenting yourself into these personalities, not saying you have multiple personalities, but you're not just one person. You can be sad, happy, you can be excited about different things and scared about different things. And so I think it's really important for an individual to understand who their true self is, that highest version of themselves, and then all the other pieces that come up and emotions and reactions, those are all your parts. And
Yeah.
that's my definition of parts.
I love that. Yeah. So for me to elaborate on that, that self, I love like bringing it to that self first. So we're talking about the highest self, our part of us that is connected to the divine, right? Like our godly self. Like there's so much language around that to define,
Yes.
that true self. And
Mhm.
then around that self is our human experience. And our
Yes.
human experience is vast. There's traumas, there's pains, there's joys, there's pleasures, and all of that is like it's amazing and it gets to be here, but they're also we don't have to identify with those pieces of ourselves while still experiencing them.
Yes, exactly. And acknowledging that they're real and they exist and they get to be here and they're valid, but they're not you. And especially if it's a
Yeah.
part that you want to work on or you want to change, it's like, great. That's a part that's here and it gets to be loved and supported by yourself. And then you can also change it because
Yeah.
I kind of picture us just like entering the world as these fresh babies and we are our true, most authentic selves. And then we have parents, we have friends, we have just so much stuff that happens in between being born and dying. And all these parts show up and it's natural and normal. And I think the most important thing, though, is doing that self discovery to really understand who that core is. So then you can work on the other parts and you can kind of release that judgment when a part shows up and it feels a little stronger than the true self.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have an example to like maybe bring some solidity to this? Yeah, like what's one
Mm.
part that you've been battling with lately or just aware of?
A part that I've been aware of and I've been working on is speaking up and using my voice. I have done work with you and also just talking to friends and mentors. And I think there were some events in my life, my child self or my teenage self, whatever it was when I spoke up, there was criticism, there was judgment. And so this part formed where it's a protector and it says, hey, if you're loud, if you speak up, it's too much. It's annoying. It's not valid. You don't sound smart. All these things that are like so not true, but can feel so true. And so, especially with starting my breathwork business, I've got a lot to say and I've got a lot to share. And so I'm battling this part right now where it's like, I want to be heard. I want people to learn about breath. But then there's that voice, there's that protector that's saying, don't say anything because it's going to end badly for you. And that's super challenging sometimes. And there's days where it feels so real, that voice, that part, but it comes back to the center, myself. I use breath to get back to that self. I journal, and I kind of just put one foot in front of the other, and slowly that part is getting less and less loud.
I love that so much that it's like you're finding those tools to be able to work with
Yes.
this piece of you, this part of you. And as you were talking, I'm like putting myself back like a year before I knew about parts work, before I understood like even my core self, right? That there was a core self and that she's a little bit different from what is showing up in my reality. And there isn't, I'm gonna like be general here, right? Like an overgeneralization, right? But so often we identify with those parts,
Yes.
right? And so like in your experience, I'm curious, like how would you have identified before? Maybe perhaps it was something like you just don't use your voice, like it's scary or it's vulnerable, like you don't speak up, you don't
I'm just like,
share.
I'm gonna explore it. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
that posting that on social media where I'm talking to the camera, that's not me. I don't do that. That's
Hmm.
terrifying. And if that's you, great. That's not me. And I'm not going to do it. Or
Yeah.
maybe speaking up in a meeting at work and voicing an opinion that's contradicting everyone else. It's like, well, if everyone else is saying this one thing and I believe the other thing, they're probably right. So I'm just not
Yeah.
going to say it. And
Yeah.
it, it was just like so gelled in with my identity that I didn't recognize it as a separate part. It was just me.
Yeah.
And I was at peace with it. It wasn't a
Yeah.
challenge. I was just so at peace. It's like, I don't do that. That's just not me. Some people do that.
Yeah. It's just who you were, right? Like it's who
Yeah.
I am.
And it's hard because it still is who I am, but I'm like I'm battling it. I'm working on it. And that causes a lot of friction and growing pains. And that's what I'm currently moving through is those growing pains where I'm like this is sticky and crunchy and I feel
Yeah.
uncomfortable, but I feel really proud of myself. And I know I'm doing the right thing. And that
Mm.
feels so good at the end of the day to reflect and say, that was tough. And I felt uncomfortable. My stomach felt a little like, knotted up, but it was the right thing. And I know that deep in my heart and deep in myself.
Yeah. And what was it that caused you to search for your true self, right? Like what was it that caused you to begin to separate who you are truly at your core from this part of you that identified so purely before?
I just have a vision for my life and for the person I want to be. And I'm at this point where I'm like, if I don't change my parts that they need to change, I'm not going to get there. And I'm kind of at this point where I'm just fed up with the parts that are holding me back. I'm just getting
Yeah.
a little sassy with them. I'm like, okay, you can
Yeah, I
be
can
here and I
feel
love
that.
you, but I need to get over here and you're in my way. So let's work together and you
Oh,
out, you can still be
yeah.
here. But yeah. So I think it's just I'm 28 and I've had these parts for probably 28 years. And now I want them to exit. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not anything profound. It's just I'm kind of tired of not being the type of person I want to be fully.
I felt all of that like so deeply in my body. I was like holding it in, like containing my
Yeah.
my body just because like it's so just I'm over it. Like I'm so over it. Like I so relate to that
Mhm.
feeling. I so relate to
Yeah.
that feeling. Um, there's so many directions I could
I
go.
know. I feel like my brain is like, there are so because I feel like we get so sidetracked too when we talk. So
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, but I'm curious for you, what kind of parts have you been working on with your business?
Mm,
Starting this YouTube channel is a big step and a big change for you. So how has that been?
yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you for asking. Thank you for asking. And I'm actually going to take it a couple steps back to one of my more prominent experiences with parts.
Yeah.
One of the oh my gosh. Okay. Let me decide here real quick because there are once again so many directions I could go with this. One of the biggest parts that I have identified with in my life has been what I would call my in the past I would have called it my losing my temper
Mm.
part. And that kind of evolved and I will now call it my angry part. right? There's just like this huge part of me that was so angry. And
That
for so
eruption.
long, yeah, so for so long, I believed that I was just a person who had a temper. Like I literally just believed that was part of me, right? Like I just have a temper. That's just part of who I am. I'm always gonna have to deal with it, and that's just how it is, you
Mhm.
know? And it wasn't until I discovered this parts work, and I was actually reading a book called No Bad Parts. It's by the creator of the internal family systems, Richard Schwartz. If anyone's like geeking out on this topic as we're talking about it, that's a great resource. But I was deep into like understanding this work and recognizing, oh, like these eruptions of mine, these pieces of myself that I don't really like, right? That I don't really want to have in my life, but that I also feel trapped by, like they don't have to exist. Like that's not how it has to be. And so it was in the exploration of that that I identified that I have this part of me
Mhm.
that is very, very angry. And I actually uncovered that the reason that she exists, this angry Dakota, the reason that she exists is because she is trying to protect me from some hard feeling or some hard experience that I had had in the past. And I
Mhm.
still don't know exactly. I think it's, a culmination of a lot of events, as you were kind of speaking to. It's like, I don't know exactly what it was that wounded my younger self, that hurt or ruptured my little Dakota self. I don't know
Mhm.
exactly what it was, but over the course of my childhood, this protector showed up, angry Dakota. And what was so profound for me as I was exploring her and meditating on like where is this anger coming from, I learned that my anger is covering up my joy. So my
Mhm.
inner Dakota, my core self, she is actually like I know this. I've seen the vision of this. I don't experience this. I have to name like I'm still not fully healed, if you will. I hate to like, not that
Journey.
there's like, it's a journey, but
Yeah.
I know intimately like, there's this inner Dakota that's like dancing on tables. Like she is just cut loose. She is fun. She is joyful, like laughing all the time, just big expressive. And somewhere, somehow, she got like shut down in her
Mhm.
childhood. Like just like not okay. It's not okay to have fun. It's not okay to express yourself. It's not okay to dance on tables, like whatever that looked like.
Yeah.
And this angry part came online to like protect me from being hurt for being that full expression of myself.
That makes so much sense. I mean, think about how silly and loud and goofy kids are, and then you're
Yeah.
you're at the grocery store and you're throwing the chips around and showing
Yeah.
your mom your belly and like I don't know, and then your mom or dad will be like, "Stop, stop!" And so
Yeah.
that's like, "Oh, okay, I'm doing something wrong. My joy was up here, and now I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I'm confused. I maybe don't
Mm,
even feel love from in this situation." So there's so many things that can come up, and that high and extreme low very quickly can be very startling to the nervous system. And you're
yeah.
creating these imprints within your nervous system.
Mm,
And if that continues and that's a pattern and these imprints get deeper and deeper, and yeah, anger can show up and say, hey, we're not going to go this high anymore because it really sucks when we go this low very
yeah.
quickly. It's too much of
Yeah.
a roller coaster ride. So it makes sense. And I feel
Yeah.
like it's normal for a lot of people to go through that because I don't know. I remember thinking it was really funny to put my feet on the table at a restaurant. I was like, look at this. And I was like, my feet are on the table. And my parents were like, no, like, don't do that. And I was like, oh. And
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of heart came up from that situation, but I'm sure something came up of just wanting
Yeah.
your most authentic self and getting shut down for it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Rachel, it's so interesting. As I was speaking and then hearing your experience, I actually have been noticing. So I shared this angry part of me because this is what I'm battling most. And I still don't understand exactly how it's influencing my business and all of the things. But I know that if I can find my true authentic self that's like just so big, so expressive, so fun and joyful, that there's just
Right.
so much there in that life, right? So, but
Yeah.
as I'm speaking this, and specifically as you talk about putting your feet on a table at a restaurant, I have been so observant of my 3-year-old and how my immediate reaction to her actions has been recently because I noticed like when I act from this protector part of me, or this part of me that's like, it's not okay to be big, it's not okay to be expressive, it's not okay to like dance around. And I've noticed myself as a parent like shutting her down for just being
Oh,
an expressive like 3-year old. And now that I have this awareness, it's like, oh, it's like now I'm like in this inner battle with myself as a parent,
totally. But
right?
it's also like, how do you then in society, it's like, okay, well, there's also societal pressures that you're trying
Yeah.
to like, maybe your 3-year-old shouldn't be putting spaghetti on her head at the restaurant
Yeah.
because that would cause a mess. And then maybe you can't go back to the restaurant. And I don't know, there's just
Right.
not like, I mean, if you're alone, maybe you'd allow your 3-year-old to put spaghetti on her head. But so it's
Right.
just being cognizant of parts and of childhood. I don't want to call that trauma, but it's childhood shifts, in your life.
Yeah.
And then being a parent and moving forward and being like, oh my gosh, how is this going to define my child? Is this
Yeah.
a moment where I'm saying, please don't do that in an angry tone because you're human, you're going to get angry no matter how much you're going to work on it. Is that going to define my child? And then when she's 30 years old, she's going to look back and be like, that really messed me up, mom. Like, that's terrifying.
It is so terrifying. And also, it's terrifying and it is the natural process of life. And that's like something I have a lot of compassion for myself and for other people. And as we're having this conversation, as we're talking about these parts of ourselves, we're not trying to get rid of them,
Yeah.
right? Like we're not trying to shame them or to stomp them down or I mean, yes, we're trying to like overcome them, but it's not through hatred or like trying to fix something that was broken. This is just natural. And it's like you were saying, there's societal pressures. It's like every single 3-year-old in the world right now is being told no about something that kind of squashes their spirit in a weird way,
Yeah.
like it's like sad, like to think about, but it's the reality is that we are shaped and molded by our parents, by society. And that's actually a very good, healthy, normal thing because it keeps you safe. It keeps the culture intact and together. And some are, worse than others if you want to put a scale on it that you can't really put on it. But the reality is we're all dealing with parts, with these little ruptures in our system that happened when we were young or as teenagers. And so now, as adults, as you're 28, I'm 27, right? As this like older adults, we're not trying to like shame the past, right? We're not trying to fix the past in a way that it's like, oh, they broke me, they hurt me, and now I got to do something about it. It's like, no, we're just trying to uncover our true, authentic selves,
Yeah.
you know?
And you get to go back to your 3-year-old self when you do
Yeah.
that and let that 3-year-old self come back. Because
Yeah.
I feel like we squashed the 3-year-old. Oh God, I don't want to say I squashed the 3-year-old, but we
Yeah.
we settle into the 3-year-old. We grow up. We are able to get jobs because we're now not throwing tantrums loudly in public,
Yeah.
and we're able to acclimate into society. And then we get to do the fun work of going back to that child. I mean, like, how much silliness can we bring back into our life? Because it's actually really
Yeah.
fun and it's really magnetizing. When you are having fun, you find the little joys in life again. Like you see the sunlight come through the trees and it's really pretty, and you get so stoked about that.
Yeah.
It just makes life so much more beautiful by seeing all the fresh and newness which children
Mm.
see life through. And so I think that's why parts work is so important, because you get to bring the parts back that you maybe silenced. You get to maybe silence the parts that have silenced the other parts that need to be here. And it's just like this balance, and
Yeah.
identifying them as not the self. That's where the power comes.
Mm.
Yeah, I think this work is so fascinating. And I think what's really fascinating is you get to bring the breath into it.
Yes. Yeah. And so it's so interesting how as adults now we get to look at those parts of ourselves a little bit differently, right? And so we're coming to ourselves. And I don't know. I'm curious what you think about this, Rachel. But for me, it's like, why am I coming to myself? It's like, that's where I have peace.
Yes.
It's that self. That's where I'm connected to a source of power that is so much greater than myself, right? That's where I access that connection to God. That's where I access my heart to heart connection with other people, that intimacy, right? That love, that joy, that peace, that inner child quality that you were talking about earlier. And so as an adult, I want that, right? I want that connection, but then I am also becoming aware of all these parts and protectors that are coming up. And the
Mhm.
cool thing is that those pieces of myself, they contain information. I see them as teachers, right? It's like
Yeah.
when I'm angry, it's like, oh, okay, there's something here that's not in alignment. And maybe it's in myself, maybe it's in something that I've chosen or a decision I've made, maybe it's in an external circumstance around me that is not true to who I am and who my core self is. And so that angry part comes online, and I can now see it with compassion and love and notice, okay, what are you trying to tell me here? And then I get to be a parent to this part of me, because this part of me is a little child.
Mhm.
Ultimately, she's a little child that's angry, that she's throwing a temper tantrum because she doesn't know any other way to get her need met. And ultimately, this part of me is searching to fulfill an emotional need of love, connection, belonging.
And what's so great about that, though, is in order to do that successfully, you need to step back from the emotion, from the situation. Doing that
Yes.
while you're in anger, while you are in rage, it's not going to happen. You are
No.
angry, you're pissed, and you're seeing red, and you know.
Yeah.
But you can then resource. You can use your breath, and then that breath creates that space between you and the emotion. And then you say, "Okay, what's actually going on here?" That emotion is not me. That is not my truth. It is here
Yeah.
and it gets to be here. But why is it here? And then you can do that work of that inspection and that dissection of the emotion. And then
Mm.
that empathy floods in when you get it. And you're like, oh, I know why it's here. And it's really because there was a part of me that was wounded. And now it just needs a little extra love for myself. And I'm going to give
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to turn this back onto your experience where you are feeling like you can't use your voice, right? Or you're struggling to speak out and to speak up in order to build this beautiful, amazing business that you have in the works. And so how do you notice when that comes online? Like what do you notice about that? And then how do you speak to it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I notice it because it feels like there's an action I want to take, and then there's a voice that says, don't do it. It's like
Mm,
this, it's like this wave. It's like, I want this, no, you don't. And that second voice, that second urge, that feeling, I know that's the part. And when that
yeah.
happens, I take a beat and I say, where are you coming from? I know where you're coming from. You're coming from this one time in high school, or you're coming from this one time, whatever. And then I talk to my high school self, my elementary school self, and say, you're going to be okay. I've got
Yeah.
you. And then I like to think of worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, people probably don't agree with me with what I say, and then they move on, and then they forget about it.
Yeah.
People have very short, like they have very short
Yeah.
memories. And I've learned that embarrassing things or things that just like hurt only feel really intense for the person who's experiencing it. Everyone else forgets. They are so consumed with their own lives. And so just remembering that when I say something and if it doesn't land well, it's going to be forgotten within the next 6 seconds. It's just,
Yeah.
oh, it's like, okay, maybe it'll be embarrassing for 6 seconds and then I can move on and then I can try.
Mm,
And so it's recognition, it's self-talk, positive self-affirmation. And then I like to go to the worst case scenario. It's how I deal with anxiety. It's like, what's the worst case? Let's go there. Okay, it's not that bad. Now we don't have to have that fear. And then I just act on it. And that
yeah.
is still uncomfortable, but it's almost like building that muscle memory. And I do feel the more I'm doing it, the more I'm maybe posting on social media or saying things that are controversial, it's just getting easier and it's
Yeah.
feeling more in flow and alignment with my true self. And yeah, I just feel like I'm getting that ball rolling. So
Yeah.
that feels really good, feeling each time, having it be a little easier every time.
Yeah. That's so good. And that makes me really kind of consider how you were talking about earlier, how it's hard to do this work when you're in the crux of the emotion, right?
Yes.
Like, and that's,
Yes.
over time, I think we build our capacity to recognize and to sit with and to hold those parts of us. But in the moment, and especially in the beginning, it's the work that you do on your own, when you're in a more resourced space that allows that capacity to build, to hold those emotions or those protectors in the moment.
Mhm.
And so, especially what you're talking to now is like that choice or that decision to speak up anyways, it's possible because you have a vision for your
Mhm.
highest self and where you want to go. And you know that it's like from your core. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what I do in between these moments is vital to do this work, which is
Yeah.
my morning routine, practicing breath work pretty much daily at this point, reflection, like lots and lots of
Yeah.
reflection and journaling. And that is where I get to come back to that self, that center, and I know my truth. And then when I step out of it, it's like, I know I'm out of my truth. How do we get
Mm,
to it? And so
yeah.
that's really important in terms of parts work, not when you're in the emotion, because it's so hard to do parts work when you're in the emotion, but in between the emotions.
Yeah.
That's where the magic and the growth gets to happen.
So good. Yeah, it's really interesting. I was doing some journaling this morning, so I also obviously do breath work, and journaling is that's my safe spot, right? Like, that's where everything
Therapy.
happens for me. It's my therapy.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. So I'll just name this. I'm currently working through a part that I do not understand at all. Like there's
Mm,
like
fun.
something here, and I'm like, I can't even talk about it because I still haven't not figured it out, but it's just like still unraveling, right?
Yeah.
And it's fun to now be in this place where it's like, okay, I'm really curious about this process. And so I just wanted to name, like, this morning I do a 3-page journal session I try to do every morning where I just write 3 pages of just like whatever comes up. And it
Mm.
was really interesting today what was coming out of my pen and my hand. I was like, literally, as I was writing, my brain was just saying, where are these words coming from? Like, where is this coming from? Like, it was literally just spitting out frustrated, jumbled up, messy words,
Yeah.
right? That mean nothing at all to me right now in this place. But it was really kind of a cool experience to sit down and realize, like, when we're working through our parts, it's not as simple as just like, okay, there's this part of me. This is where it comes from. This is what
Oh
she
no.
wants. This is what she needs. It's such a process, and it's frustrating and it's long and it's a journey. And it's,
Yeah.
like just that returning to it over and over and over again. Um, I now know and I trust that process that when the clarity hits, like it's so worth all of that weird, jumbled up, messy middle piece.
And I also think it's important to remember that you can't think your way through it all the time. You sometimes have
No.
to feel your way through, and maybe that clarity will come when you're deep in your body. You're so like out of your head because you have done, maybe it's an intense exercise and you're just like really connected with your body, or you do breath work, or just like some other way. And then it's like a light bulb comes up and it's like, oh, that's where that's coming from. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I know how to bring my brain into this scenario and really connect all the dots. And so bringing
Yeah.
in that body work with the cognitive
Mm.
aspect is vital for parts work sometimes.
So much, like all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes and all of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. And people are just, I feel like when you're trying to think your way through something, it is just like, it is intense. Like there's tension. You're just like muscling your way through something
Hmm.
that is like not meant to be thought through. It is something to be felt through. And that is such a nuance in our society to just feel through and figure it out. And
Yeah.
I think it's becoming more and more popular, but it's still
Yeah.
something that, I mean, you have an issue in your life and you want to work on it, you go to talk therapy, which is also great and wonderful. And there are also some things that talk therapy doesn't provide, which is that somatic approach.
Yeah. It's incomplete. It's
Mhm.
important. It's so important, but it's incomplete. And so tell
Right.
me more about that, like that body work, that somatic, like what do you mean by that? How do you feel your way through what's coming up?
Mm. I do some breath. It's not a whole session. I'll probably do maybe a minute, maybe like 10 like really intense triactive breaths. And then I sit with it. Maybe I'm working with a somatic coach that could also help,
Mm,
but I sit with it and I let what comes up literally flow up, and it doesn't even feel like it's my thoughts. It's just
mm,
like it's like these, I'm very visual in my mind, so it's these
yeah.
images and scenarios that I can see, and those just float to the surface. And that's when I'm like, okay, why are these here? And then I go deeper into them. Maybe I'll do some breath again and breathe into what I'm seeing. This sounds like,
Mm,
I don't know. I feel like this isn't tangible for people who maybe don't have a visual brain, but maybe it's like a word or a color that's coming up, whatever it is that just comes up, it floats up because you've given it the space to float up. You're not constricted.
mm.
And that's when I bring my brain into it. I'm like, okay, why are you here? And so it's just, yeah, it's such a fluid process. But using the breath is the
Yeah.
most important piece to it.
Mm, yeah. So good. So good. It's so hard to in one of my past interviews, I was talking about this with a lady. It's like we're sitting here having an intellectual brain to brain conversation, right? And it's like it's so hard to really articulate what it's like to drop into the body, to feel your way through what's coming up because it's like it's not meant to be articulated, you know?
Yeah.
It's literally
Yeah.
just meant to be felt.
That's why when people do breath work and you're like, how was that at the end? People are like, good, really good. That's about it.
Yeah.
Some people are able to articulate it, like people who have practiced breath work for a while, but some people who are new are just like, something was healed, something's aligned. I don't
Yeah.
know what to say. And you're like, that's okay.
Yeah, it's like that was something. It was good, but yeah, there's no language. Like it's not meant to be a linguistic experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I
Yeah,
know. That's why I just want people to get in front of it and just do it. And then it's like,
right.
because I feel like you can even talk about it. I can be like, this is amazing. It's like, yes, it is amazing, but it is just so much deeper than that. That the work you get to do when you're in that state, when you're in your body, your brain is, I feel like I can't even access my thoughts when I've done breath work, which is just so
Mhm.
wonderful sometimes because
It's
there are so many
liberating.
thoughts. Yeah, there's so many thoughts happening all the time. So I feel like it's a radio and I just tune it down all the
Yeah.
way. And it's just that blissful silence. And when it's so silent and you're so centered,
Mm,
so much gets to happen, so much healing,
yeah.
and so much you get to access this deeper level of love for yourself. And oh, just wonderful.
I could just I feel it. Like I just like get giddy. This giddiness was
Mhm.
rising in my chest. And the word that came up for me was wisdom. And
Mhm.
this society that we're in is so focused on your thoughts.
Oh
Like
yeah.
so much of everything in society is centered around what you can think, what you can produce, your ideas, like
Mhm.
the structures of the mind. And that's like I'm gonna put a number to it, like I know, but I don't. But it's like that's like 20% of your human experience.
Oh yeah.
You know, like it's a tiny, tiny part. It's a tiny, tiny part. It's important. It's amazing. But there's so much wisdom. There's wisdom in your body, there's wisdom in your nervous system, there's wisdom in your the or like your physiological self, but then there's wisdom in this soul part, this soul,
Mhm.
this spirit, this
Yes.
energetic, like there's so many different ways people talk about and understand their own unique energetic imprint, but that part of us as well, like that part doesn't live in the mind either. It touches the mind, it embodies and encompasses the mind, but it's there's so much wisdom to be felt and observed and witnessed in silence of the thoughts.
And something that came to mind when you were speaking to that was, if there's a rupture in your life, like let's say there's a foundational rupture when you were a child and that caused a crack in that root of yours, You need to get to that root. You need to drop into your root and breathe into the root and so connected to that root. And I am not thinking about my root chakra at all during the day. I forget that I have the rest of the body from down here.
Yeah.
This is my body. And I don't know about my legs, my toes, like what. And so being able to remember, come back, and then work with those other parts and get in touch with them and become friends with them and love them. And it's so important to do that because you literally forget that those exist and they're equally as important. Because all the other parts can't align, can't be in flow until those foundational chakras are also intact and good. Because if there's a blockage, you're going to feel it on all the other levels.
Yeah. Yeah. And the moral of the story is that if you're watching this interview and you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling like you can't get your business going, if you're feeling like just any sort of crunch or just you're wanting ideas or just you're not in that flow, my invitation to you, if you're watching this and feeling the truth of that, is like, go breathe. Go breathe and just recognize that those, you don't even have to identify them as parts, right? You don't even have to pull the weeds apart. Just recognize that frustration, that grit, that whatever it is you're feeling, that's not your true self. That's just information. It's just information.
I like to name my parts. I feel like that's Sally.
Yeah.
That's not me. That's Sally. Just being able to it makes sense
Yeah.
to some people, That's not me. That's Sally. So
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you can pull that apart and you can find those names through the power of your breath.
yes.
It's so cool.
It's so cool. I still speak out about it. It's just so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness, Rachel, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I am so proud of myself for actually ending on time. I just have to name that because we could seriously talk so long. And we'll just have to have another conversation because this could go forever.
There's a lot here.
There's so much here, but I'm just so curious for the people who are watching. Where can people find you? Where can people access your content? You have a new offering coming soon that might be live. I don't know exactly when this is going to go live, but where can people find you?
So my company is called Let It Be Breath. So the website is letitbebreath.com. And you can find me on Instagram at letitbe.breath because someone took the Instagram handle Let It Be Breath, which I'm part of me. There's a part of me that's upset about it. So letitbe.breath on Instagram. And then Rachael at letitbebreath.com. And this was good. A good way to tell you.
Yeah. Are you taking breath clients? Like, what do you offer?
Yeah, I'm taking breath clients.
Beautiful.
I'm to launch, it most likely will be launched by the time this is live, a online platform where you can receive unlimited breath work for about $40 a month. There's just like a gym membership for your soul and your mind. And it's going to be a really wonderful community. And I'm so excited about it. So,
oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited. So excited.
Thank you.
So good.
Thank you. So much love for you. This was wonderful.